So we've got a spreadsheet full of user feedback. And what we did previously was we took all of that user feedback and we threw all of that into a vector storage database. That way, we're able to query that database semantically based on theme labels or keywords or whatever. But that involved us having to actually know what to search for, what keywords to use, what theme labels to be searching the data for. And that involves us going through the user feedback and familiarizing ourselves with what people are saying. What if that bit can be automated? And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, bro, just throw that into ChatGPT. It's going to just give you the themes and everything's going to be magically okay. But let me remind you of the promise and reality. And I'm going to keep on mentioning this. The promise is that these big LLMs are going to read, for instance, all 7 volumes of the Harry Potter book. But in reality, they're only going to read 3 pages. And then they're just going to make the rest of it up. So there is a limitation that we need to work around. So let's create a workflow that actually works efficiently within the constraints that we are working with. Okay, so I like to start every workflow with a quick sketch of what I'm going to be doing. Let's do that here. So we've got Google Sheets. So this is Google Sheets, and this holds all of our user feedback. And let's just show you what that looks like. This is our user feedback. Cool. What we want to do is we want to fetch random n rows from that user feedback. So from that user feedback, I want to randomly fetch n number of rows. And actually, let's make n 10 rows. I'm picking 10 just to make it easy to work with. And then that we're then going to send into our AI. So this is our AI. It's welcoming the user feedback with open arms. And then it's going to create a list of themes. And if we use a chat interface to chat with it, we can trigger it X number of times. So however many times we want to trigger it, we can trigger it any number of times, get those themes, and then once we've got enough of those themes, we're satisfied that we understand the key themes of what people are saying. And that's going to be our research model that we're going to use. And it's just going to be a very quick way of us familiarizing ourselves with the data, but we're just going to have a little bit of a helping hand from the AI. Cool. So let's go ahead and build that. So the first thing we want to do is we want to add our chat trigger. That's our chat trigger there. And let's just leave that as it is. And the next thing is to use Google Sheets, connect to Google Sheets. We want to get rows, and I've picked the document from the list. And as you can see, the document is Smoking Bones, and the tab we want to pick up is smokingbones.csv. So that's the tab that we want. From the sheet, we pick smokingbones.csv, and let's execute that step. And let's just say hello. We can type whatever we want in there, and it's just going to trigger. And then out here, we've got the output. And if we go in there, we see that there's a whole ton of rows that is returned. So this is good, but that's not exactly what we're looking for. What we want to do now is we want to limit and randomize those number of rows. So the first thing we want to do is introduce you to a node called sort. And what sort does is if you pick random, for instance, it will shuffle the rows. So here you can see the first row coming back is 177. If we execute that again, 217, execute that again, 1105. So it's just shuffling all of those rows in a random sort of order. And then obviously we still got a whole ton of rows there. So we want to limit those shuffled rows to 10. We had a look at limit before, but all limit does is it just truncates. It just uses the first 10 in that list. So now we've got the first 10 items from the list. What we've done here is that we've fetched the entire document, we've shuffled the rows from that document, and then we've limited the number of rows to 10. Now let's send that data to an LLM to get the themes. Let's do basic LLM chain. And rather than picking up the prompt from the chat trigger, let's define it below. This way we don't need to write it out every single time in the prompt. And if we expand this, what we're saying is give me the themes that describe the following user feedback. And let's say return as a list of themes. And then this is the column. So if we look up here, this is the column that contains our data. So let's throw that in there. And then if we execute that step, we're going to get an error because we haven't attached a model yet. So this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the open router chat model. Now, previously we had been working with local LLMs, but full disclosure, this is running on my server now, and I don't have a local LLM set up. So I'm just using an open router. But don't worry, we're going to use a small model here. And the model I want to use is one called Llama 3.2, 1 billion instruct. Now, the reason I picked that model is I quite fancy checking this one out. It's supposed to be very efficient in terms of energy expenditure and also really quick. The small models are useful in that way, in that they're super efficient. So I want to see how this one fares, especially with the tasks that we give it. Now we've got this, let's open up the basic LLM chain again and trigger the workflow. Straight away, you can see, if we look at the output, it's output a list. So it's called the open router chat model 10 times. And the reason why it's done that is because it's going through each and every single one of those 10 user feedback. And then it's kind of like gone through each of those 10 and sent each specific user feedback to the LLM for processing for themes. That's not what we wanted. What we wanted was to have all of that user feedback, all 10 of the user feedback sent to the LLM to extract for themes. So let's fix that. What we want then is to create another node in between the limit and the basic LLM chain, which will aggregate. So this is our new node. And what that aggregate is going to do is it's going to take whichever field that we want to give it, tell us about your experience into the field name. And what the aggregate does is it goes through the list of all of those rows, fetches the tell us about your experience, and puts all of that into one big list. And then this way, when we go to pick it up in the LLM, all of it is going as one chunk. So you can see there's one call being made to the open router chat model, and it's giving us a list of themes back. So if we go back to our chat and we trigger this again, it doesn't matter what we say, it's come back with the list of 10 themes to do with those random feedback. And it's always giving us 10 because I guess it's like the LLM is looking at each one of those 10. So maybe you want to pick a different model or something, or change a prompt, so then it kind of doesn't take the 10 so literally. But yeah, but let's trigger that again. So now we can trigger this any number of times. And that model is super fast. You see how fast that was. And yeah, each time we do it, it's going to give us a list of themes back, which is great. And what we can do as well in the prompt is that we can ask it for stuff like, when you give us the themes back, give us the actual quotes from the text. And then that way we're able to double check that the themes match the quotes. So what have we done today? We've created a research workflow. We sketched it out first of all, so we knew roughly what we were going to build. Then we built the workflow. I introduced you to a sort node, which shuffles the rows that's coming back. And then we limited those that shuffled the rows to 10. And then we used an aggregate to take those rows and to create a compressed list of just the items, just the feedback that we want to feed into the LLM. And we've used a small model to then extract the themes. And our requirements aren't huge, so we don't need a big model. A small model is totally fine for this. And also, we're doing our bit for the environment. Yeah, hope you found that useful. We're going to take this concept and we're going to build out from this workflow in the next video. So join me for that.